Good afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google+. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Sunday, February 21st, 2016, around 5:26 in the afternoon in Billerica, Massachusetts. It was a very sunny day out, highs around 50, perfect winter day, which kind of felt spring-like. Tomorrow, maybe back to normal, but no significant storms. The next significant storm is going to be a big rainstorm. Maybe to start off with some snow in the beginning, but no significant accumulation for snow. Some news to report. Former NFL running back Joseph Randall got arrested again for assault and battery. This is the fifth arrest he's had in the past 18 months because of so many issues. He's never going to be playing in the NFL again. The Baltimore Orioles signed Giovanni Gano pitcher to a 3-year contract worth $35 million. And Denny Hamel won the Daytona 500 that starts NASCAR season. And that's it on the news. My second video blog subject of the day is about the movie that came out in March 23rd, 2001, a comedy called Say It Isn't So, and it was produced by Bobby and P.D. Farley and directed by J.B. Rogers, and it's about a love story about a guy named Gillies and a lady named Joe Winfield, and they were going to get married, but they were like they were actually could have been brother and sister, and then it turns out they weren't. And it's a story that's a very funny movie. I'll tell you more about it. And here's who it starred. It starred Chris Klein as Gelly Noble, Heather Graham as Joe Winfield, Orlando Jones as Dig McCaffrey, Sally Fields as Valdine Winfield, Richard Jenkins as Walter Winfield, Eddie Carbren as Jack Mitchelson, Sarah Silverman as Gina, and Brent Briscoe as Vic Vedder. And the story of this movie starts off at Gillies Noble, who works for the Shelby, Indiana Animal Control, and he is actually an orphan, and he was talking about seeing him wanting a lady and stuff, and he finds a cat named Ringo, and then he and his co-workers were at a diner, and one of them comes up to them and he got a haircut and says the hairdresser is a very attractive lady, and Gelly wanted to see this lady, and he went to the beauty parlor, the hair salon, and it was Joe Wingfield cutting hair, and she says the next customer is Gelly Noble, and Gelly sees the picture of the cat he rescued, Ringo, and Joe says, "That's my cat," and next thing you know, Joe accidentally cuts off part of Gelly's ear. Gelly has to go to the emergency room of the hospital, and Gelly gets out, and he's in line to get a next ear transplant. Very funny. And Joe's feeling so bad for Gelly, invites Gelly over for dinner. Gelly at first kind of didn't want to refuse, but Joe insisted. And then the next day, Joe invites Gelly over to her house, and Gelly meets the family, Valdine, who is actually the mother, who's actually kind of self-centered and egotistical, and the father, Walter, who suffered from 2 strokes, and he's in a wheelchair, and he has to use a synthesizer because he's recovering from a stroke, and Valdea Winfield told Joe that why did you and Jack break up? Because Jack lives in Beaver, Oregon, and Valdine really wanted Joe to marry Jack because Jack was a millionaire 10 times over. And then the family meets Gillies, Walter and Valdine, and Valdine says, what's your career? I'm an animal catcher, and one of these days he wants to be a veterinarian. And Joe is flirting with Gilly, and putting his her foot in south of the border, and Valdine's not really impressed with Gilly's career ambitions. And then they show Joe and Gilly's up on the roof of the shelter, and Gilly was telling a story about how pets go away to Joe, and it was real nice. And then Gilly meets up with Vic Venner, and Vic Venner says he's found Gilly's real mother, that she could be alive, and the real mother is Yami Managuchi, who's actually Asian, and he says that sounds too ghoulish, and Vic's trying to find him enough her real mother. And then they show Joe and Gilly's relationship develop into 6 months, and then they're on top of the animal shelter, and then Gilly has the ring. He's going to propose to Joe, and Joe, there's a plane coming by, and then next thing you know, Gilly goes down to Joe and says, "Will you marry me?" And he said, "Yes." And then there's Gilly and Joe were making love, and then Vic Venner leaves the answering machine for Gilly's, and Vic says, "We found your real mother. 110% sure on this. Your mother's name is Valdine Winfield." And that means Gilly and Joe are brother and sister, and it's an incest relationship. And then Valdine says, "We gotta understand, we were strapped for cash, and Gilly was eating too much, and Joe was housebroken already." And then Joe and Gilly break apart, and Joe goes in the bathroom puking, and Valdine says, "How could you pork your own sister?" And then Walter does, because he's still in kind of a little bit of a vegetated state and stuff. Incest in many states, it's illegal, and you could get arrested and register as a sex offender. And then they have, about a year and a half later, Joe runs away, goes to Oregon, and then Gilly grows his hair. He was fired from the animal shelter job, as an animal control catcher. He now works for the state highway department in Indiana. And then he grows his hair's long, and he has a beard, and then he gets ridiculed on by his co-workers, and then everybody in the neighborhood calls him a sister fucker, and all bad names. And then his so-called father, Walter's kind of regaining a little bit of mobility, kind of talking a little bit without the synthesizer, and he's drinking and says, "Do you know what it says in the Bible? Don't fuck your sister." And Valdine was like, told Walter to knock it off, and says he's been through a lot. And then the bell rings, and there's a guy that shows up named Leon. And then Leon shows something to Valdine, saying that Leon is actually the son of Walter and Valdine, and Leon's like hugging Valdine, and then Walter says, "And if he's your son, who is this sack of shit?" And then Valdine says, "This guy is a drifter, a freeloader, and a shyster." And Walter gets up out of his wheelchair. Get out of my house, you hippie!" And then Walter suffers another stroke. And then Valdine says, "Call 911," and she tells Gilly to get out. And then Gilly leaves. He's clean shaven, and they go straight to Beaver, Oregon, because he knows that Joe is gonna marry Jack Mitchelson, and he knows that he's trying to get back his girl. And then Valdine goes to Beaver Police and tells the Beaver Police that Gilly's on his way, and he's a sex offender, a sexual predator. While Gilly's traveling to Oregon, he hits a guy who is lost both his legs, so he's wearing prosthesis. And the guy's name is Dig McCafferty, who is a legend in Beaver. And then next you know, Gilly drops Dig off at a place, and he told him the minute you go, just leave. And then next thing you know, Joe is working in her beauty salon, and they show pictures up where from Gilly's name is him as a sexual predator, and Jack Mitchelson gets his stooges, who's one of his brothers, Jam, and this guy named Freddie, and this guy named the Streak, and their goal is to get Gilly out of the area. And when Gilly stayed at a hotel, he was going to visit Joe and tell Joe that the news that he's not really his brother, and trying to get her back. But then the goons come out with Jim and Freddie and the Streak, and they blow him on Gilly, and they send him on a plane to Mexico. Gilly had him go back to the United States and go back to Beaver, Oregon. And then when he gets there, he goes to the beauty salon where Joe works at, but she's not there. And then the assistant, who's an Indian guy, wants to give a message. And then when he gets the message and a piece of paper, he's unaware that the piece of paper he has on the front is his picture as a sexual predator. And the Indian guy says, "You're a sick man, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. Gilly had to run away. Then he goes into a bar that Diggs there. He's playing Keno. He's probably losing. Don't many people play Keno lose, and a lot of people in Beaver. And they were talking how Jack Mitchell's such a great guy. And Diggs says, if you really love this woman, referring to Joe, just say goodbye and good luck. And Gilly goes back outside, and then Joe knows that he's in the area, and she wants to actually meet Gillies, and she's kind of heartbroken because she's actually still in love with Gillies, even though she doesn't even know that they're not really brother and sister. And she says, we shared something, but we'll see each other again at family funerals and such like that. And Gilly says goodbye and good luck. And it was very sad. Joe was even crying. And next thing you know, when Gilly's is arriving at the bus station, some kid like steals his bus ticket, and the kids come back. And then there's Dig, and he's saying, he gives the kid cigarettes. Don't smoke this until you're 12. And he says, what's the problem? And he says, why were you saying positive things about Jack Mitchelson? That was just show business. And he says how the bad stuff about Jack Mitchelson. Next thing you know, the goons come back again, and they take Gilly off. And this is when like Valdine and Walter and Leon come into town, but Leon has to stay at a motel until after the wedding, because he can't see Joe get married to Jack, because that's the real brother. And then Gilly somehow escapes after like Jim, who's actually blind, accidentally knocks Freddy out and the streak. And then he walks away and, goes away. And he runs and he catches up with Dig McCafferty, and Dig actually is an airplane fighter, and he shows he made up a banner. And so, Joe, I'm not your brother. Will you marry me? Because he heard something that Joe and Jack were having kind of a party before the wedding at Jack's and Joe's estate. And then they showed the airplane that Gillies and Dig is flying. Fly over the lake and stuff, but I'm not your brother. The not your brother thing was taken off, and it goes up. Do 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 do. Everybody at Jack's and Joe's pre-wedding party sees Gilly and Dig, and everybody looks and sees Joe, I'm your brother, marry me. And then Joe says, isn't he, he's crazy. And then the police see that, and they're going to catch Gilly, and they're going to throw him in jail after he lands. And Dig and Gilly land, and then next thing you know, the police come up and put Gilly's in another house, the State Mental Institution, with Jack Mitchelson paying for it. And then they show Gillies having a group session with many people, and the nurse saying, how could we to stop loving somebody who's so close? One of the guys said that I had sex 3-4 times a day with my wife, but she's dead now. That's not what we're talking about. Another guy says, can we have pancakes? Yeah, he was in the loony bin because he was obsessed with pancakes. And the nurse says, how could Mr. Noble control his feelings with his sister? And they were saying that. And then, for breakfast, the next day, Gillies is having breakfast in the cafeteria. Then the streak comes back, he's put in a mental hospital, and he says, I know you. And then he has new pictures of Joe and Joe's panties, but he wants $10 for the panties and $10 each for the new pictures of Joe. And then Gillies only has $10 on him, but the streak says, you owe me a lot of money. And then they start fighting like crazy, and the whole cafeteria is getting wound up, and the guy who loves pancakes says, pancakes. It's so funny. one of the funniest scenes in a movie ever. And then they put Gillies in like with a muzzle into a special chamber, and then Diggs breaks him out, and then that guy who's obsessed with pancakes thinks Dig is the pancake guy, and they break off, and Diggs drives Gillies and the guys who's obsessed with pancakes out of the insane asylum, the mental hospital, cuckoo house, whatever you call it, and they heard that Joe and Jack were going to get married that day, and he has to stop the wedding. And then, while driving by, Leon was driving by. And also, like, they said that Leon was an imaginary friend that Gilly had. But he's real. And then, like, they stop. And then, you gotta stop that wedding, Gilly, as like, Diggs said. And Dig was gonna hold down Leon, and the pancakes obsessed guy was with him, helping him out. And then when Dig McCafferty had 2x4 on Leon like attacked him. No, Leon was attacked Diggs, and next thing you know, his like prosthesis legs are gone. They're thrown up on the roof, and Leon scoops up. And then when Gilly's driving to go to Beaver to tell Joe that he's not his brother, he gets stuck with cows. There's a whole bunch of cows. And then next thing you know, he wanted to move the cows, but he gets his arm stuck. He gets his hand stuck in one of the cows, and the cows are moving. There was a herd of them, and into Beaver center, and everybody was seeing it, and they were calling names about Gillies. Did your sister turn you down? Yeah, so much stuff. And then next thing you know, Joe comes out and says, Gilly, what are you doing? I have great news. I found Leon. Get your hand out of Leon's butt. Because she thought Leon was a cow. This ain't Leon. If you go to this motel, I'll show you Leon's there. Gilly, you have issues. You have to go back to the hospital. We'll take a drive back to the hospital. You shouldn't have gone out of the hospital. And the next thing you know, Joe knows about the pant. Joe notices the panties on Gilly's pants and the new pictures, and she was disgusted. And the guy who was doing her makeup, the Indian guy, says, "Yeah, you would be in my country. You'd be being bambooed and stuff. You are sick mentally, pivot." And like Gilly gets disappointed, and then Gilly goes back and tries to get the rein out of the cow, but he gets stuck. And then Gilly's trying to hitchhike back to break up the wedding, but the Streak's back. Streak has a gun, and then he steals Gilly's van. He attacks Gilly, and he takes the rein, and he drives with Gilly's car. And then the wedding starts, and Walter tells Joe, Are you happy? And she says, Are you happy? This is what you want? Joe says, Yes, it is what I want. Because I think Walter knows that Joe's heart really is with Gilly. And then Leon sees Gilly's truck. He thinks Gilly is driving to crash the wedding. And then Leon says, This is my wedding gift for my sister. And then Leon hits Gilly's truck, but it actually the Streak's in it. And that next thing you know, the car flips over, and the car's on fire, and the Streak's burned to a crisp. But when the police get there, they assume it's Gilly. And then Jack and Joe get married, and the priest says, if there's anybody to stop this wedding to say something or forever hold their peace, Walter's saying, she's in love with Gil. And next thing you know, Valdine says it malfunctions once in a while. They shut it off, and next thing you know, when Jack and Joe are married and the wedding reception, Walter is locked up in a room. He knows something. And then Valdine Winfield proposes a toast to Jack and Joe Mitchelson after the wedding, and they said, my daughter's finally found the man of her dreams. And then next thing you know, the Beaver police come, and they say, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchelson, we got bad news. There's been an accident. Your brother Gilly was killed in an automobile accident. The body was so burned and to a crisp because of coyotes coming in the vital parts. And they showed the thermos where they put his ashes, and Joe was crying, and she said, I know he would kill himself for this. I know he would kill himself. And one of the police officers says, no, he didn't. And they had custody of the guy who killed Gilly, but it was actually the street, but they didn't know about that. And it was actually Leon was arrested. And then Walter comes out and says, Joe, that's your real brother. Leon's your real brother. And he says, we hid the truth for that because Valdine wanted money from Jack, the crack of Jack's money, and sure do I. And then she says the false information was with Gilly. You know a guy named Vic Fenner? He set the whole thing up. Jack set the whole thing up. And he says, that's a lie. And Joe says, you're crazy. Why could you do this? Why would you lie to me? And Valdine said that it's for your own good. He was a jaw catcher. And the next thing you know, Joe slaps Jack. You're sick. You're sick. Could make one big happy family. Don't include me. And then Valdine comes in and attacks Leon. Says, you ruined this. You ruined this. You ruined this. And next thing you know, Valdine goes crazy and she has a stroke. And afterwards, Gilly walks up and sees Dig McCafferty, and he says, everybody thinks you're dead. Well, that's it. But then they had the pancake guy eating pancakes, and he says, good luck to you. That Dig said to Gilly. And then they show Joe driving back to Shelby, Indiana, and then she goes up to the top of the Shelby Animal Control building, and she's going to try to commit suicide, try to kill herself. And then Gilly gets his old job back in the Animal Control. His supervisor before says, deep down inside, I know, I always believed you. And then Gilly says, Joe! And then she does a boom. Gilly thought Joe killed herself, but she was actually going up high, and then she throws the ashes supposedly of Gilly's, but actually of the streak. And then next thing you know, Joe sees Gilly's, and she's so happy. They're really gonna get married, and they do, and all of their friends are there. And Walter, who's fully recovered now, is doing Valdine, who's now in a wheelchair. Valdine, you ain't losing a daughter, you're gaining a son. Blow me, Walter, with the synthesizer. That's very, very funny. And then they have Vic Venner come back, says, congratulations, we got a wedding to do. We have a wedding reception to go to. I found your real mother, Vic said to Gilly. She flew in from California. And then Gilly's mother happens to be Suzanne Summers. And Suzanne Summers says, "My baby, my precious gift of God." And Gilly says, "Suzanne Summers is my mother." And Joe was a little bit jealous. That's the perfect way to end the movie. It's probably one of the most funniest movies ever I've saw. It was released by 20th Century Fox, but when it was in the movie theaters, it only made $12 million worldwide, which was absolutely a flop in the box office, but I watch it a lot on HBO On Demand, and I have the DVD of it, and it's a really good movie in my humble opinion. The Farley Brothers movies, they always put some nutty things in. Some of it's like, with humorous, and sometimes it's, sometimes sick humor, sometimes outrageous humor, but it's a fun movie. It's rated R, so it's not for kids. And that's about it on that. Be back with the third and final video blog of the night, which will be about the late great actor, singer, game show host, game show producer, talk show host, and real estate magnate, Merv Griffin. Keep calm, everybody. I'm a Julie Bunning guy. Molly Roseblood of WCCO rocks and has nice legs. Elizabeth Hart, so stunning. She's the best. Amy Swenzies rocks, and she's so awesome. And in the words of Dee Patel last week, no bus. Don't forget Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google Plus questions, comments, concerns, shout-outs, plugs, and videos, blogs, suggestions, private message me will be addressed. Bye now.